Hello and welcome to episode number 115 of Week in Review. My name is Sean, and on this week's show, it is time to look back at the first quarter and see what the best games and best movies were. We'll also look forward to the second quarter and see what is coming out in the next couple of months. We'll take a look at this week's new releases, and I'll tell you about the streams happening over on twitch.tv/SeanSaurusRex. So it is April 7th, the day that this posts, and that means that it is the perfect time to recap the first quarter of 2020, and we'll start on the game side this time because I think that's the easier of the two to talk about. We'll begin with a quick recap of the first quarter of 2020, what I was looking forward to. Obviously, because it's a brand new year, there are no rankings to remind you of, so I don't have a current game of the year that is set to be beaten, but I was looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Remake, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and Doom Eternal. Final Fantasy VII Remake was delayed from its March 3rd date to a April 10th release date, so that one technically doesn't count because I can't play it, and it wasn't my fault. So technically 2 for 2. Played Doom Eternal, played Animal Crossing. It's probably going to be pretty easy to guess which one of these two I liked more. It's Animal Crossing. Doom Eternal was a disappointment. I was frustrated with it, and over the last week, and I won't harp on it too much because it was just on last week's episode, but over the last week I have heard a couple of other people talk about Doom Eternal, and they seem to be having some of the same problems that I was having, at least from a rhythm standpoint, from a flow standpoint is probably a better way to phrase that. Just not enjoying the platforming and weird stuff in between the arena battles. And it seems like that a lot of some of the other people that I've talked or listened to have a problem with the curve of fun, because it's not necessarily like a difficulty curve, but there is a level of like, once you finally start getting the upgrades, then you start to become more powerful and it starts to become a little bit more entertaining, and it definitely has a slow build to that. You start with very few guns and not a ton of ammo, and your upgrades are pretty weak, but once all that stuff starts to flesh out towards the back half of the game, it does become a better experience. It is a game that is way too long. It has an enemy that's terribly broken, and it just has weird stuff in the middle that really interrupts the flow from one combat piece to another. It's a weird game. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I watch it and I'm like, man, I could probably like this more. But then I think about why I didn't like the game, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm not gonna worry about going back to it. Animal Crossing, on the other hand, was a tremendous surprise. It is my favorite game of the year. It's not the most complex game that's ever come out, and I think even from like a gameplay perspective, you'd probably give the edge to Doom Eternal because it is like a gameplay game for the most part, right? But what I like so much about Animal Crossing is the complete package. Not only do I like playing the game, but I like talking about the game with people. I enjoy learning things where, like, people, when I'm streaming, will put like little tips in the chat that's like, hey, press Y next to this hole in your character instead of using their shovel. Well, kick it with their feet and cover it up, and like just fun little quirks like that. Oh, I have this DIY recipe. I found these sunglasses. I thought you'd like them, so I sent them to you. It's really fun to watch and watch other people's progress on their islands. It's fun to watch people make designs and do that sort of stuff in Animal Crossing and make like their shirts and their dresses and pants and all those sorts of things. As far as like a whole complete package, and even outside of the game, Animal Crossing is far and away my favorite game of the year. I'm still enjoying playing it. I kind of fell off mainly because I was playing Doom, or banging my head against the wall while I had a controller in my hand attempting to push buttons to make progress in a video game. So I haven't been as on top of it as I was. The Bunny Day event that's going on right now has kind of reinvigorated me. I have like a little bit more of a clearer goal. I want to get all of that stuff, because if you get all of the DIY recipes made by April 12th, then the bunny guy, whatever his name is, I'm totally blanking on it, and I'm hoping that by the end of this sentence I can remember what it is. It's Zipper. He will give you a very special prize. So that's kind of my overall goal right now. I can be doing some other things as well, but I kind of just want to do the seasonal stuff because I think it's really cute. I like the way it looks. The design of it is really nice, and I am personally a fan of the pastel color palette. I really love Easter from not only a deviled egg perspective, because that's like my favorite food, but from a color palette perspective, I love Easter. I think it is far and away the best of any of the holidays. Just the colors are so crisp and bright and nice to look at, and I really appreciate that about not only Easter in general, but about this update. The upgrades are, or the DIY recipes, I should say, are really, really, really nice to look at. They're cute and fun, and I'm just having a really good time with it. And I'm really enjoying the pace of that game. It's a very slow drip game that kind of feeds you like once a day and gives you like, okay, here's your task for the day, or here's this task for the next day, or kind of a bigger goal. I'm loving it. I'm having a great time with it. Aside from Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing New Horizons, I haven't actually played a ton of games that came out in 2020 until this last week. I've been off work, so I've been having extra time to stream, and that means that I can kind of dig a little bit deeper in the back catalog or just in the various digital stores and find some weirder stuff that interests me. And so I finally got around to playing Coffee Talk, which is a game that I really liked. It is a very story-based game. It has a little bit of a gameplay element in that you are a barista and you have to make drinks, and so there are some like puzzle elements, very light puzzle elements. Sometimes you have to figure out exactly the drink that someone wants in order to help them achieve their goal. Sometimes you have to take the clue that they've given you, like I want something that's sweet and bitter, and you have to make sure that you put the drinks in, or the ingredients in the right order to make the drink that they want. The gameplay elements are very minimal. They're pretty few and far between for the most part. It's mostly focused on dialogue, character dynamics, and I think it does a really good job at creating a set of characters that felt like regulars from a coffee shop, where you're like, oh, I hope that Lua comes in today, or I hope that Aqua comes in today. I want to see how they're progressing in their relationships. I like the way the characters interacted with each other. It's at its best when it uses two characters to work through a situation rather than some of the other situations where it's a little more ham-fisted. For example, the first part of what I'm talking about is Lua and Bailey's are having trouble with their relationship because they've been together for a very long time. This game is set in like kind of a fantastical Seattle, so there's like elves and succubus and a couple of other types of creatures, and one of them's from like one of them's from the water. Aqua's from the water. They're Lua and Bailey's. Bailey's is an elf. Lua is a succubus. They shouldn't be together because elves don't think that he should be seeing anyone but an elf, and the elves are very pretentious and high and mighty and blah blah blah. You can kind of see where they're going with that, but he really loves the succubus. And the game is at its best when it uses those two characters to work through that situation. It's at its worst when the situation with Aqua takes kind of an interesting turn with someone that she's talking to, and it's very ham-fisted and on the nose about game development and it not being great. And it's like, oh, okay, this is very like, it's like a character like pulling your head and being like, it's really bad when game developers have to work really long hours, and it's grueling work, and it's bad, and we should fix it. And it's like, okay, I understand that. I know that. All right, let's go the other route. Fortunately, it does tend to work with the more nuanced approach for the most part, and that is what makes this game so good. I really enjoyed it. It's about 5.5 hours or so. I don't know. It was a good game that I really enjoyed. It sat on my backlog for a while. I just never got around to it. And I finally did, and I'm glad that I did finally get around to it. The other game that I played from 2020 this quarter in the last week was The Complex, which is a full motion video game. So an FMV game. You basically watch a movie and you make decisions to push the story forward. So you have an option pretty early on. You can either like follow someone down a hall, or you can go with this one person, or you can do some other third thing. It's fine. It has the quality of like a sci-fi 10 o'clock p.m. premiere video or movie where it's like made for TV. The effects aren't super great. The characters are at best. It kind of goes in a very generic way as far as the plot is concerned. But I had fun with it. I feel like it's people who are trying and maybe are just a little bit limited with their budget. There are a couple of parts that are like really poorly written. There's a joke that doesn't really make any sense and is borderline offensive because it seems like something that the writer thought, oh, I can just use this word and that gets me out of this situation, but they don't actually understand what that word means or why it would be a problem for some people to hear. It's also just a really stupid joke on the like very surface level of it, so it's like triple offensive. There's also a bit that basically gets a lot of the characters out of situations where it's like, oh, I can hack, and it's like, oh, this is okay. Well, it's fine. Whatever. It's fine. I had a good time with it. I actually quite liked it. It tries to have a little bit more emotional gravity towards the end. Doesn't quite grasp it. Some of the characters are really shitty, especially her, I think, ex-boyfriend. I don't really know. He sucks. He isn't great. But overall, I had a good enough time with it that it was fine spending the hour and 20 minutes or whatever, however long it runs. I liked it enough. So those are 3 games that I enjoyed from the first quarter of 2020. They are fine. Animal Crossing is far and away the best. The game that I liked second most was Coffee Talk, and then I guess I liked the Complex more than I enjoyed Doom. I don't really know. The third spot's kind of just up for grabs. It's been a slow start to the year. Not a ton of stuff has come out and stuck out to me. Some of the bigger stuff, Final Fantasy VII Remake, was delayed into April. It's been kind of a messy start to the year, and unfortunately that mess continues into the second quarter because I have no idea what is supposed to be coming out because everything's getting delayed and pushed back. Within the last week, Sony has delayed 2 of their bigger quarter 2 titles, The Last of Us Part 2 and Iron Man VR. Granted, I wasn't going to play Iron Man VR because I don't have a VR set, but those both got delayed indefinitely with the whole pandemic that's going around. As for April, there's a selection of games that are out that were mostly complete by the time the shit really hit the fan. So Resident Evil 3 came out. I'm not going to play that. We have Totally Reliable Delivery Service, which is a game that I bought and just haven't played yet. Snaky Bus came out last Friday, which I played and completed and enjoyed. So there's a heads up on quarter 2. And then later this month, we have stuff like Final Fantasy VII Remake, we have Disaster Report 4, and there's a game called Moving Out. But beyond that, I didn't really find a whole lot that was all that interesting. I'm assuming that the second quarter is going to be mainly propelled by these smaller indie titles that are readily and easily available on digital platforms, and I know about much closer to the release date. I had no idea that Snaky Bus was coming out until about a week before the release date hit. So it's kind of just one of those weird things. That's typically how it seems to work with the games. I come out and I'm like, here are 3 games or 5 games that are coming out this quarter, and then there's 6 or 8 other ones that are like, oh, this is coming out literally this week. This looks interesting, and then it ends up being a lot better than some of the bigger budget stuff that comes out in the same quarter. So a bit of a weird situation, but that's what it is. And yeah, I guess for quarter 3 in review, when I'm like, oh man, I should look back at this video and like make sure that I have written down what I need to have written down. I'm really looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'd like to play Totally Reliable Delivery Service, and I would like to play Moving Out, and then Snaky Bus would be on that list as well. Just the timing of this video didn't quite line up with the release of that game, and I've already played it, but it still would have been there had I had known about it in some weird alternate universe, or if I just made this video like a week prior. There you go. There's 4 games that you can play this month that I'm looking forward to. Switching over to the movie side is a little bit more complex this time around. Looking back again, we'll start same kind of order that we worked with last time. I actually mentioned 6 movies that I was looking forward to, or, well, 2 that I was looking forward to, and then 4 that I was curious about. The 2 that I was definitely interested in were Onward and A Quiet Place Part 2. Quiet Place Part 2 got delayed indefinitely. Onward was alright. And then there were 4 other movies that I was interested in. And then there were 4 movies that I was interested in, Like a Boss, Sonic the Hedgehog, Birds of Prey, and The Rhythm Section. Of these 6 total movies, I saw 4 of them, which is great. I mentioned that Quiet Place Part 2 got delayed. I missed The Rhythm Section. It was in theaters for about 10 days, maybe. It was not there for very long. It actually, unfortunately, has the worst opening box office weekend of all time as far as a theater participation of 3,000 screens or whatever. I can't remember what participation is, not the word that they used, but it was on 3,000 screens. It did terribly. It was out of theaters very quickly, and I just nothing ever lined up to go see it. And of those movies that I was looking forward to, only one of them would actually qualify for what I thought was the best of the quarter. And the movie side is a little bit more interesting because I don't exactly know how to rank them, because none of these movies are perfect. They all have a weird little quirk to them. But there are 4 distinct great movies that came out so far in the first quarter. Birds of Prey was a movie that I liked a whole lot. It's a really rough start. It takes a while to get going. Once it does, it creates really interesting characters that I really liked. I think they finally make Harley Quinn an understandable and empathetic character. They do a really good job just building this interesting world that I wanted to see more of. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, with its slow start, it's because it's so closely tied to Suicide Squad, and they just shouldn't have done that. They should have erased that in some other weird way of just being like, oh, I woke up from this terrible nightmare where this happened. Bam. Get it out. Get it over with. It doesn't have to be that way. But what it is a whole lot of fun. There's some fun action set pieces, especially towards the end. There's like a whole fun house sequence that's very creative and interesting, and I really, really grew to love that movie, obviously. Obviously, I like the characters. I really like the performances of everybody. Roman Sionis, played by Ewan McGregor, really stands above and beyond. I really liked Margot Robbie. It's just a really good movie that I enjoyed a whole lot, but is severely hampered by a pretty rough start in the beginning. The Invisible Man was a movie that I kind of saw on a whim, mainly because I like Elizabeth Moss as an actor, and I like the director who did Upgrade. This movie is mostly great, and it falls under the one weird quirk thing. I don't like the ending. I still haven't quite exactly figured out why that is, because like I was saying in my review of it, every time I came up with a reason, there's a through line that kind of erases that, where it doesn't make sense in my head to be like, well, I didn't like this, but they kind of explain it well enough, I guess. It's a very tense movie. It's more of a psychological horror than an actual horror movie. That worked much better for me. That's not to say that it isn't scary. It's just more, I would argue that it's much more creepy and unnerving. Working with the idea that there is someone there that you can't see that's affecting your life and trying to rip you apart from the ends, or rip you away from all of your friends and your family, and just continue the Invisible Man's cycle of abuse on you is pretty terrifying, but much more in a mental capacity than like, ooh, poo, gotcha types of scares. Yeah, great movie, just don't like the end. The third movie is Extraordinary. This one, I don't think it has like one exact quirk to it or one part of it that I don't really like. It just comes under the label of a Shaun-ass movie. If you like stuff like Shaun of the Dead, if you like stuff like What We Do in the Shadows, I think this fits very well with those two movies. It has a really weird, quirky, bizarre sense of humor. I'm not super convinced that Will Forte needs to be in this movie. He feels a little out of place. They do explain it away pretty well. I like what this movie does. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It has a clever and fun ending. It hits a nice little emotional moment right there at the end. It's a really well done, well made Shaun style movie, and that is its only caveat would be that it's not for everyone. It's definitely not for everyone, but I think people who are going to love it are going to love it. People who are not going to like it are going to forget that it probably ever existed in the first place. So the final movie on this list is Just Mercy. I just never got around to reviewing it. This is a really well-made movie that just had a lot of parts to it that I couldn't ever dissect exactly why I liked and put it in an order that made sense to me. There's a lot going on with this movie. I think it's super well made. It stars Jamie Foxx, Michael B. Jordan, Brie Larson more in the first half. She kind of fades to the background in the second half. And Tim Blake Nelson has a supporting role. He is pretty much absent in the first half, and he is more prominent in the second half. Michael B. Jordan goes down to Alabama to work with wrongly incarcerated folks to try and get them out. It's a really well made, really well done movie. It parallels a lot of things that we see today. It has some kind of early implications of using like mainstream media, like a 60 Minutes bit, to talk about a case that should not have gone the way it went. Jamie Foxx's character is wrongly imprisoned for a crime that he did not commit. All the stuff that was submitted about it is flimsy at best and an outright lie at worst. It tends to lean towards the outright lie portion of it. It has a lot of different cross sections between like foregone guilty conclusion to police officers and lawyers who are more than willing to submit false testimony to get the answer that they want for the quote-unquote protection and the closure of the family. I put those in quotes because they only care about the protection or the safety of one part of the community, and the closure can't be real closure if it's not actually the person who did it. There is the aspect of just using someone else's their weakness or their fear to get a result out of them to help build a case. It's a very interesting and very well done movie. There is an incredibly well done emotional punch in the middle of the movie that is absolutely tremendously well done. It feels weird to talk about this movie because on one hand I'm talking about it as like a film, like the way the plot progresses is interesting, the way these emotional moments are handled are well, the way this stuff works and the way the stakes are set are well done. It's odd because it is based on a true story, so that makes it so that it's not actually characters, it's real people in real situations. So talking about it like, oh, this is just a movie and a thing that happened, it's like, no, this is a thing that happened, a dramatized version of something that literally really happened. And so it can have a little bit of a weird connotation with some of the words that I'm choosing to use, but strictly speaking from a film perspective, all of this is super well done. The emotional sequence that I'm talking about in the middle, I remember I went with my mom to this movie because she really likes based on a true story movie. So I was like, okay, well, I'll take her to this. And we both really liked it. And this sequence that I'm referring to is a very long sequence. And she thought that it was too long, and I actually thought that it was too short. It is an incredibly important sequence for us, the audience, to be in those rooms, in those moments with these characters as they go through this situation that they have to go through. There is a scene that I think got cut a little bit short in this sequence that I was very surprised by, because the one of the characters goes, "Hey, will you pray with me?" And I thought, okay, we're gonna get this prayer and we're gonna get this engagement from Michael B. Jordan's character and the person that he's talking to, and it cuts away, and I was just very surprised. But just the slow build to its inevitable conclusion is so stretched and strung out in the best possible way, again strictly from a film perspective, that it hits when the sound, and you'll know it if you see it, when that sound hits, it is a gut punch, and it's just so well done. And that was the sequence of this movie that I left thinking the most about. I actually really liked Tim Blake Nelson's performance a lot. I thought he was very good, which isn't a surprise. I like him, but it was also like, wow, I wasn't expecting that from him. Again, this movie has a couple of quirks to it. There are two kind of weird plot lines. One of them is like a very ancillary character. He has like a little bit of an arc that makes sense for the type of movie that this is, but at the end he kind of undoes it with one of his own actions, and I thought, that's kind of weird. It seems like he should have pushed it one step further in the direction that they pushed him in his arc throughout the movie. And then the very end of it, I didn't understand why one of the characters made the decision that they made. It basically boiled down to, he saw something on TV, got a dirty glare from his wife, and had a porch conversation with Michael B. Jordan, and all of a sudden everything changed. I don't know. It was weird, and I didn't quite get it. The problem that's going to run into is that if you push it too far, you might run into a bit of the like white savior complaint, and I totally get that. I was thinking about that after the movie. I was like, oh, if you push this too far, it might come across weird. The thing is, the other aspects of this that could have been deemed in that particular complaint are actually done really well, and I think that this is the movie that could have really done the correct way to do that sort of thing, if you can do that sort of thing. I don't know, it was just a weird kind of jarring, like, wait, why did he make the decision that he made? Like, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I liked Jamie Foxx's character. He's very reluctant and not convinced that anything is going to go right, and doesn't really even want to try, but Michael B. Jordan kind of chips away at him throughout the movie. It's a really well done movie, and I thought that it was incredibly well made. It's a very, very good movie. Have I told that enough, this review? So those are some thoughts on 4 great movies that came out in the first quarter of 2020. I don't really have a ranking for them. They're all just movies that I really enjoyed. Put them as you please, alphabetically, whatever. I don't really It doesn't really matter to me. They'll all be in contention through the second quarter, which is where things get weird because there's nothing. There's just nothing. Everything's delayed and pushed. The studios were in droves. Just all of these movies are canceled. They're pushed indefinitely. It started with like A Quiet Place 2. I'm sure there were some others before that I just didn't really realize were happening. But it started with A Quiet Place 2, and once that domino fell, a lot of stuff did. Disney pushed all their stuff. So there's nothing to look forward to as far as the second quarter is concerned. Maybe we'll check back in a little bit and we'll see kind of what's going on as far as movie releases coming out soon, maybe. Kind of. I don't know. Finally, on this week's show, we'll take a look at this week's new releases. There's nothing in theaters, there's nothing really on Blu-ray, and there's really only one game worth mentioning, and it is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Disaster Report 4 is also out this week, but Final Fantasy is the big one. It got delayed, like I said earlier, from March 3rd to April 10th, and it is finally out this week. I have it bought, downloaded, ready to roll for Friday so I can stream that, and that'll be part of this week's streams. Speaking of this week's streams, over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex, I'm not exactly sure what the streams are going to be, what the games are going to be, and what the times are going to be. My work schedule is a little in flux, so I'm not 100% sure. Friday for sure will be Final Fantasy VII Remake, just don't know what time it's going to start. Saturday will for sure be Final Fantasy VII Remake, that'll probably start around 2 p.m. Pacific, and Monday for sure will be Paper Mario Part 2 on the Nintendo 64. There will more than likely be additional streams, especially on Wednesday and maybe on Thursday, just kind of depends on what my schedule's looking like. That'll dictate what time the game starts and what game that will actually be. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Week in Review. If you like the content, you can scroll on down and you can hit that subscribe button. You can scroll on down a little bit more and you can leave me a comment down below should you so wish. You can tell me what your favorite movie of the first quarter of 2020 was, what your favorite game of the first quarter was of 2020 was. You can tell me what was disappointing, what was surprising. Let me know down there. You can do that as well. And then when you're scrolling back up the page, hit that bell so you can be notified when I post videos. Be sure to head on over to twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex and catch the streams over there. For sure on Friday, Saturday, and Monday, there'll probably be additional streams throughout the week, so you should go over there and follow. That way you get notified when I go live and you can watch me play random video games for hopefully fun. And as always, be sure to check back right here every Tuesday for more Week in Review. We'll see you next week.